This is Behind the Mic with Kirkus Reviews, where the subjects are audiobooks and the actors who narrate them. I'm Jo Reed, and I am joined by contributor Stephen Cummings. Hello, Stephen.
Hi, Jo. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you. And we're talking about celebrity memoirs, perfect for this time of year.
Yes, one of my favorite genres, I have to say, because they're fascinating. I don't think memoirs get a lot of respect sometimes in the literary world, but I enjoy them so much. And audiobook formats, I feel it really is the way to enjoy these titles. So I have a few here that we are going to discuss today.
Okay, share them.
So we have Arsenio by Arsenio Hall with Alan Eisenstock, read by Arsenio Hall. Then we have Famesick, Lena Dunham, read by Lena Dunham. And then True Crime by Patricia Cornwell, also read by the author Patricia Cornwell.
Those are three very different celebrities, so this is interesting. And I had a fun week, listening along. And we're beginning with Arsenio.
Let's go ahead and start with Arsenio Hall, maybe because I just remember his show so well. So let's talk about that. This is an Earphones winner in Kirkus. Arsenio Hall is an actor, a comedian, and if you're someone who identifies as maybe members of Generation X, that would be me, in full disclosure, or at least in the vicinity of that, you'll likely most remember his talk show from the early 1990s. It ran for a few years, and it was a lightning in a bottle hit. And it's the main subject Arsenio Hall talks about in this memoir. And I think that's notable because he has a whole career. He's been in movies, he's been a comedian. In fact, in the audiobook, he talks about his start as a magician. But I think about the movie Coming to America. He was a co-star in that. And that still seems to be a movie people reference to this day. That's a part of his career. But this audiobook is most interested in that talk show era.
Can I just say a word about his narration? Because I listened to this. It should come probably as no surprise, but it has that same fast, loose energy that I certainly remember from the show. And he's so at home behind a microphone.
He is, and that's what I loved about it too. It's almost like this is a voice out of time. He hasn't aged. He has experience. He has the ability to look back, but his voice is still just as full of energy and joy as ever.
Absolutely. And he's such a natural storyteller.
He is, isn't he? And he has so many stories to tell. And my tendency here is to call him by his first name, Arsenio, because I'm one of those folks who was in college and I watched his show routinely. And his name was just a literal brand. His fist pump motion at the beginning of his show, swirling into the cursive A, that was just indelible. I remember that as much as anything. And it's been 35 years or so.
Wow, it's been that long.
I know. I'm sorry to mention it, but it's been a while. It's been a minute. Wow. Hall is no surprise an entertaining narrator, as we said. His desire to be the next Johnny Carson it's palpable. And so at one point, Hall describes how he happens to be in the Burbank studio in California where the Carson show was taped. He was just there for another reason. And he somehow manages to sneak into the studio, sit behind the desk, and get just the feeling of wanting his own show. And you just feel that in the story that he's telling you. I don't know how he managed to do what he did. And I don't know. I just love that story. I can't imagine. If I snuck on a stage, I'd probably get arrested. He made it happen.
I was also moved by the beginning of the book. It starts with him recounting being asked to present at the Emmy Awards fairly recently anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an event he's gone to very often in many years. And he was so moved by how much people remembered him.
And I remember that passage too. And that's one of the many things about this book that took me by surprise, just how emotional it gets because of the arc of this guy's story. And it goes back to just the work that he did and everything he put into that show in particular was so remarkable. It is because he was a Black man hosting a successful show in an era which just had several networks, all dominated by Johnny Carson and Letterman. And there were a few other shows that didn't succeed and actually were notorious flops. And yet he survived. And he talks about this. And he also talks about that constant tension between the various demographics he was reaching, which demanded more Black representation, which he did. You look back at his roster of guests, it's very notable. And also the network he worked for, Paramount, which pushed for the biggest audience possible. And that would mean the white audience. And so he discusses this. The moments on his show are historic. For example, Bill Clinton was on the show playing the saxophone. Pundits sometimes attribute that to the success of the Bill Clinton campaign. Maya Angelou was on the show.
Yeah.
Minister Louis Farrakhan, a lightning rod of controversy. All historic moments on this television show.
He talks a lot in the book about wanting to be the next Johnny Carson, as you said. I mean, that is so clear. But he also makes clear he was building something very different at the same time.
Absolutely. He comes back to that because there's this constant tension. Because if you just do what's successful, then you're doing what's done. And he wanted to do something new. To his credit, he did that. The show didn't last beyond, I think, 6 years, but he makes it very clear. He left it on his own terms. He made this decision to end the show the way he wanted to end the show. And I felt that was also it was an effective way to describe and discuss that experience that he had.
I agree. And I think 6 years, that's quite a long time to be on television.
It is, especially now. And nothing lasts a year anymore, I have to say. So it's remarkable, the work that he did and the history that he has left behind there.
Why don't we hear a little bit?
Absolutely. So this clip will be Arsenio Hall, of course, basically relating to us what lit the fire for him in wanting to become a talk show host. So in this moment, he's at home as a young boy, and his mom is busy. Now, again, I relate to this. I mean, I think a lot of us, especially in my age group, perhaps, remember being raised by the television. I have to laugh a little bit. So he's in the room watching television on a 19-inch television set called Emerson. So that was his babysitter, Emerson. And this is where he discovers his first true calling in life.
This is Arsenio. It's by Arsenio Hall with Alan Eisenstock, and it's read by Arsenio Hall.
I'm enamored with these daytime talk show hosts. Their style, how they socialize with their guests, and how they love music. Both guys were big band singers, and they often sing with their in-studio bands. These shows are casual, loose, fun. It's like Mike and Merv are having a party, and I'm invited. I don't like real parties, so watching a talk show party on TV is perfect. Later, when I'm in high school, I get hooked on Dinah. Not what you'd expect from a black kid living in the ghetto. Something about Dinah Shore's breezy, welcoming style connects to me. And I love how she starts the show with her signature, a D, with a straight line shooting off into the air like an arrow.
And of course, those guys are Merv Griffin and Mike Douglas.
Yes.
And I completely forgot about these hosts.
I remember the Merv Griffin show. I remember that was just...
Yeah, I remember both.
I remember watching them.
And Dinah Shore.
Yeah, afternoon show. Again, as a child, what's on TV? It's reruns of Brady Bunch or the Merv Griffin show. I get it.
Yeah, which way are you going? Listening to this really brought back everything I liked about him and his show. The liveliness of this narration. His timing as a narrator is just so sharp. He knows when to lean into a joke, when to pause, when to let a moment land. He is really a good narrator.
I agree. This was just a pleasure to listen to.
Absolutely. And now we move on to Famesick, written and read by Lena Dunham.
Yes. So Lena Dunham. And just to kick this off, a different approach to narrating, which I'll talk to in just a second. Lena Dunham is, I'm thinking, probably most known for her role in the hit HBO series Girls, which ran in the early 2010s. This is her second memoir. Lena Dunham is very forthcoming and explicit about her rise to fame, the development of her show, the impact it had on her. She actually got discovered pretty young. I think she was in her late teens, early 20s, but she made a movie.
It was Tiny Furniture. I think she was about 22, and I saw it before Girls ever came out, and I loved it.
Yes.
It was a wonderful, wonderful film.
She made this movie, And Judd Apatow noticed it and took notice of her and served as a prominent mentor, which led her to the success with the show Girls. Now, the title Famesick, this is the title of the memoir she's writing, that's not a metaphor. So listeners who might only be somewhat aware of Dunham's work shouldn't be shocked that she's going to go into pretty specific detail about the experience she had. We're given in-depth looks into her multiple medical issues, which stem from the work that she was doing, among other things, and also her struggles with substance abuse, which led her to inpatient rehabilitation. And just to note that too, because she was not just well known, but somewhat, I think she talks about in her book how she knows that there is a certain type of person out there that gets triggered by or upset by or just sort of has a reaction to the kind of work that she's doing and the kind of person she is. So her privacy is just very limited. So I think while she was in rehabilitation, even then she couldn't be guaranteed privacy. Dunham also takes a hard look at her professional and personal relationships. One in particular involves her partnership with the producer of Girls, Jenny Connor, with whom she had a working relationship, grew over time, very supportive, but then it tends to fall out, and then they're no longer even talking to each other. To hear her relate that experience and everything she put into that, it's heartbreaking, but I think somewhat relatable as we get older and we have these kind of things happen. And I note that that's just something that is a consistent story throughout the book. They're no longer speaking, if I understand correctly.
I found the book pretty much the way I found Girls, which was compelling, sometimes maddening, painfully honest. There were times I thought she was so spoiled, I wanted to just shake her.
Yeah.
And I also didn't want to stop listening. All of this was going on at the same time. She so wants to be loved. She really, really does. And I'm not sure anybody can love her enough.
She's very aware of these complexities. She wants to please people, like you said, to a certain degree, but she's also her own self.
Yes.
And that is the tension that keeps coming back. And I agree. Watching the show Girls, this felt like that. This really felt like, yes, I can see where she resonated with this character in that show, because this really feels like we're out of that show, but we're still in it in that way.
And I think it's also, she was like 24 when she was
very young.
Yeah, doing Girls, and she was the creator, the writer, the actor, and the director.
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot. For anybody, but when you're 24, it's really a lot.
I do think she notes too that's hard to say no to those things. Like these opportunities were just right there, and to have this show on this really big branded network, you can't possibly say no to that. But she acknowledges how much work that was, and that's again what may have led to her struggling physically or struggling mentally over time.
Yeah, she's at the age where you're figuring out who you are. That it hasn't really set yet. Maybe.
Well, she's definitely finding her way through all of this as she's doing really big marquee work. And one of the things she talks about here is that she has these relationships with her coworkers. One of them, for example, she talks a lot about the men in her life. Probably the big media discussion around this book as it's been released is the behavior of one of her co-stars on that show, Girls, Adam Driver, who Dunham remembers as very intense, very intimidating. And I can certainly see that, not just by watching the show, but just knowing that actor and the work that he does. And again, as a younger person trying to navigate all of this, you have this other character here that's just filled with something going on, and maybe he's being method, maybe not. There's a moment where she wants to exhibit one of the show episodes with him, and he can't stand watching himself. So he just gets up and leaves. And later just calls as if nothing happened. And she's trying to figure what is this all about? Did I offend you? And he's like, no, I just don't like watching myself.
But she also spends a bunch of time wondering what Adam thought of her as just a boss, as a friend, as a possible lover. But what I found so interesting, and I think kind of opens a door to her, is we don't really hear about her thinking about what she wants with him.
Right.
It's what does he want with me? And then, she can adjust accordingly, but not what do I want with him.
And there's a dynamic there that's perhaps relatable but instructive about how do we fit in with these spaces and what should we be focusing on in our expectations. You're absolutely right. I really like that you make that point, because that really comes through in these consistent discussions of relationships. She talks about relationships a lot in this book. It's not a recurring theme. It's like one of the themes about how she connects with other people and what does it all mean. And I suspect there'll be a third memoir down the road that perhaps will help take us even further with this development of who this person is.
She always has had a kind of startling candor. But I have to say, I felt this memoir feels less performative and more reflective about the cost of being publicly exposed for so long.
I agree. I think that there's a little more of a sense of how she's presenting some of this and presenting her story. And there's actually one moment where she can't even bring herself to explain a controversial event that took place that she was in the center of. She just asks the listeners to just go find that information if you need it. But I'm going to talk about how I felt about it. I listened to that thinking, well, just tell us what happened. Just like go there. But I think for her, she's so close to this stuff because this is who she is, that she doesn't necessarily want to take it that far, but she also wants you to think about, this is the story, this is the thing. What I'm talking about, I think, is, well, I'll leave the listener to find out, because that's part of the intent. I think the intent of this book is for where she goes and where she doesn't want to go.
Well, let's hear a little bit of the book.
Yeah, let's go there. The clip you'll hear here is just, it's Lena Dunham talking about the early days at college and the beginnings of her creative work.
This is Famesick. It's written in red by Lena Dunham.
When I was freshly 20, on summer break from college, a place tucked between scenic Midwestern cornfields and a post-industrial wasteland where meth had replaced sprockets as the major export, I made my first short film. I called it a satire, although I'm not sure I knew what that meant. It was about a teenage art dealer, played by my brother when he was still presenting as female, who ruled her gallery with an iron fist, bossing around people 3 and 4 times her age, an idea that seemed like a fairy tale, but was, in retrospect, a rather prescient vision of my life to come. I cast my family, used our home as both production office and set, and made ruthless fun of the very industry that had allowed me to grow up in the city and attend the esteemed liberal arts school I was currently enrolled in. I haven't watched the film in 20 years. I'm sure I would be both charmed and alarmed by its amateur presentation, but at the time, it felt like one small step for me, one huge step for womankind.
I think if you've watched Girls, that narration that we just heard, it's so recognizable. You know, it's dry, it's sharp, it's funny. Mm-hmm. The cadence is really very familiar. But tell me if this makes sense. There's kind of a weariness underneath it that feels a little bit new throughout the book.
Yeah, I'll have to say that when I listened to this book, and I listened to her audiobook right after listening to the Arsenio Hall memoir, my first thought was that Lena Dunham's approach to reading her memoir is to read it as if she was reading someone else's life in a way. It took me a minute to fully get on board with this approach. I absolutely agree with how you describe her approach to this. I found it at first to be a little detached, almost like a recitation. At the same time, that's only because, again, I compared it to Arsenio Hall's performance, which, for all I know, he's just telling you a story extemporaneously off the top of his head.
Absolutely.
And he's performing that to you, and it's very effective. Clearly, Lena Dunham is reading, but it's also effective because I think perhaps given the intimacy of the stories she's providing and the candid way she describes events and the choices she's making on what she doesn't reveal or how she puts these into some various contexts, it's an understandable choice. And I completely agree that it does connect to the performances of her show Girls, for example. So that I want to say it worked for me, but it was definitely a different path that we went down with Lena Dunham in this particular performance.
Yeah, she's very emotionally controlled, I think, in her narration. That stands in juxtaposition to the extraordinary candor she has in what she's revealing.
You know, that's the other thing too. Whereas most memoirs perhaps don't go where Dunham goes. And that's one of the things that I really like to recommend about this too, is that she is just willing to go and talk about her illness, talk about these relationships in depth. I don't assume it was easy for her to sit down and write this. And maybe it was therapeutic. Maybe it was something else. I don't know.
Yeah.
but she goes there. And I give her full credit for that, because it's exactly what you said. I had all these feelings listening to this audiobook, but I couldn't stop.
Right.
I took this book in pretty quickly.
And now we have a third choice, True Crime, a memoir written and read by Patricia Cornwell.
Yes. So Patricia Cornwell, of course, is an author. She is maybe one of the people who helped really kickstart the forensic true crime genre. The Kay Scarpetta novels are immensely popular mysteries around the smart and driven main character, Kay Scarpetta. She is a medical examiner in the books. She's been the subject of nearly 30 crime novels to date. I have read, I think, 6 of these. I read these when they were relatively new. Back at the same time that Arsenio Hall was on TV, these books were rolling.
Actually, I think that's true for me too.
These first few titles came out, and people could not stop talking about them. And before I knew it, I'd taken in a few titles just because I found them fascinating. So here we are. Now we have the author telling us her story. Her memoir is, I think, a fascinating recount of her time growing up in the South. She spends time describing her troubled and somewhat unpredictable parents. There are some very difficult passages here to listen to, but they are also compelling in how they may have informed her eventual path to crime writing. In one moment, her mother destroys the children's belongings in a fire during a mental break. In another, her father brings the children out for a boat ride before perhaps succumbing to his own bizarre behavior. So Cornwell writes and narrates these passages so effectively that I just found myself again leaning in, wanting to hear more while I'm listening to it. And it, of course, makes sense. She's a crime writer. She's a writer. She knows how to convey stories.
I found her young life unexpected, so deeply sad. It was Southern Gothic. I mean, her father would say to her mother while her mother was asleep, "You're not fit to live," and just keep repeating that over and over. Ugh. And then at the same time could be a fun dad with the kids. I truly am so thankful. I can't imagine growing up.
Yeah, I can't either. And at the same time, you're right. The Southern Gothic of it all comes through. And by the way, I should note, Cornwell's Southern roots are very present, and her voice is too in this memoir. She has a very Southern style, intonation, drawl, whatever you may call it. But she's clearly using the voice that matches these stories for whatever that's worth. That makes sense, right? This is her experience.
No, absolutely. I thought her reading was measured, not a lot of flourishes. It's written, of course, but also narrated with the pacing of somebody who has spent decades building suspense.
Yeah, I completely agree. So when I came into this book, I sometimes don't know if I want to hear all these stories because I'm such a fan of the work that she's written. She's got a really fascinating journey. This is a writer's journey as much as anything else. Her start was inauspicious. She actually wrote descriptions for a local newspaper of upcoming television programs back in the day when you would open the newspaper to see what's on TV, a whole other world. And she didn't do a great job. She was bored by it. She started making up plots and characters because in her mind, who cares? And I kind of thought that was, it was a hat tip to that. After debuting with the biography on Billy Graham's wife, Ruth, Cornwell gets strong mentoring advice that leads her to work as a writer for forensic crime novels because that's what she knew. She was actually a reporter on a crime beat. And she was able to pull from that the experience that informed now going on, what is it? Like I said, almost 30 books since the early 1990s.
I thought she was really frank about failure and detours and uncertainty before success arrived.
Yeah.
Really explored that very fully.
Yeah, there's definitely a theme here if you were to go back to the other 2 books we've discussed today, the other 2 audiobooks we've discussed about overcoming. Hers, I have to say, I would say among all of these titles, she had such a significant series of hurdles to jump as well to get where she is today. And it's just notable as I think about all of these titles that we're discussing today, that's a recurring theme. Absolutely.
And I also thought it was such an interesting contrast between the Patricia Cornwell that listeners know, like me, know, that best-selling crime writer, and the younger Cornwell who she introduces to us, who's like struggling to figure out what
Mhm.
kind of story she wants to tell.
As somebody who also does some writing, not at all to the level that we're talking about here, I completely appreciated and actually found very validating how you have these skills or you're developing these skills, but what is it that you're going to put your effort into? Like she put a lot of effort into this, into the Ruth Graham biography. And as a fan of her work, I remember looking at her list of works, and you have all these titles from the Kay Scarpetta series. And at the top was always this Ruth Graham title. And I always thought that was an interesting outlier. That's partly her finding her way. That's partly her finding her voice and her style of writing and the subject she wanted to go to. Once she created the Kay Scarpetta character, which she actually evolved this out of a different focus where I think it was a more traditional style of a crime novel with, I think, a male PA or somebody. And I think it was, if I remember correctly, she was given guidance to say, no, your character is Kay Scarpetta. That's the character you should be investing in. And once she did that, everything clicks. And these books just have been flowing ever since.
Well, let's hear a little bit of the flow.
Yeah, let's get a little bit into the flow. Here, you'll just hear a little bit about how this memoir got its start. So we're starting at the most recent moment, and then we get the history.
This is True Crime, a memoir written and read by Patricia Cornwell.
By the end of 2024, I was 5 months early turning in my 29th Scarpetta novel, Sharp Force. I don't know how that happened, but some plots uncoil faster than others, the characters more cooperative than usual. Suddenly, I had time on my hands and decided to draft an autobiographical treatment for the proposed TV show. If it were made, the details I supplied would be helpful to the writers. Getting started, I was frustrated immediately. I hate composing pitches, summaries, master plots, and resist talking about something instead of writing it. I won't do outlines unless it's after the fact. In college, I always created them and the index cards last. I'd rather jump straight into the term paper essay or story. Within days of working on the treatment, I quit and began writing this memoir.
I really like this anecdote because I think it reveals so much about her.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just get on with it. I mean, I don't want the outline. I'll write the outline later. I just want to...
I thought that was, again, I as somebody who writes and likes to learn from other writers, these processes are just fascinating to me because my whole life, what have I been taught? You have to start with the idea, then you got to map it, then you got to outline it, and then you got to do all these things. And again, this is a writer's journey, and what she's telling you is the outline comes later. That to me just turns everything on its head, but that's wonderful.
Yeah, I thought it was wonderful. I really liked it. Oh, God, what a good week you had, Stephen.
Well, I appreciate talking with you. I really love these books. I'm glad we had a chance to talk about these audiobooks together today. Thank you very much, Joe.
And I'm so glad you had these before I'm taking my car trip.
Yes, recommended. Definitely recommended.
Because these are really good car trip books. So thank you so much. And I will talk to you in a month or so.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thanks so much, Joe.
As do I. Thank you. This has been Behind the Mic with Kirkus Reviews. We drop on Thursday. If you follow us, we'll just appear in your feed. And then follow Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. Fully Booked is the podcast for book lovers. Every Tuesday, Megan LaBreeze brings you author interviews, industry insights, and recommendations from the bestseller list. Find your next great book on Fully Booked by Kirkus Reviews. You can follow Fully Booked and Behind the Mic on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Audible, or wherever you get your podcasts. And then stop by kirkusreviews.com to check out reviews for both print and audiobooks. Behind the Mic is produced by Jessica Lockhart. Michelle Cobb, Stephen Cummings, Leslie Fine, Alan Minskoff, Alex Ritchie, Laura Rossi, Laura Simeon, and Kendra Winchester are our contributors. Jennifer Dell is our editor with assistance from Alicia Langerman. Tom Beer is the executive producer, and the music is William Ross Chernoff's Nomads 4-Way. I'm your host, Joe Reed. Good listening.